A dark prophecy foretold a princess would destroy the world, and for centuries, none lived past 5. After years of disasters, the people began to believe the curse. The consensus was clear. The princess must die. Her parents rejected the decree, but a man warned them that keeping the princess alive would bring ruin. King Cile of Astria furiously declared they would not kill their child, arguing that calamities are inevitable. A courtier countered, stating all past princesses had grown evil and it was absurd for this one to survive. King Cile, beside his queen, vowed they would raise their daughter well despite the prophecy. Protected by her loving parents, the infant princess survived. But tragedy struck when a fiery carriage crash claimed the queen's life. At the funeral, a young, pink-haired girl stood with her father and brother before her mother's coffin. A nobleman blamed the princess for the queen's death, enraging the grieving king. In a flash of fury, the king struck down the accuser. The nobleman's body fell lifelessly to the floor. King Cile, bloodied and enraged, swore death to anyone who dared harm his daughter. While mountains of her oppressors' bodies piled up, she grew up surrounded by her father's love. Her father knelt before her, promising that no one would ever hurt her again. He asked if there was anything she wanted, and the young princess hesitated. He assured her not to worry, promising he would grant any wish. As her father held her close, she felt uneasy about his boundless generosity. She learned the source of her power was a malevolent force within her, the demon king's seed. With a somber gaze, she realized this power also came at a great cost. When she asked for a simple cake, her father promised one as large as the castle. Her desires grew darker, a priceless necklace, then an entire forest, and her father granted them all. Ensnared by thorny roses, a now corrupted Saraphina smiled with malevolent glee. She stood alone amidst a hall of corpses, her evil deeds strengthening the demon king's seed. The seed finally bloomed, transforming her into a winged demon before horrified onlookers. With King Cile and Prince Johan dead, a man declared that Demon King Saraphina must pay for her crimes. Soldiers charged forward, their voices united in a single cry, "Kill her!" Looking at the dark energy corrupting her hand, Saraphina wondered how she had fallen so far. A devastating crack sounds as she unleashed a powerful explosion, scattering the soldiers. As a dark presence loomed, she cried out for someone to stop her, horrified by her own actions. A fallen soldier lay dead on the blood-soaked ground. A mysterious figure observed her destructive power, deeming it fitting for a demon king. Cile Ertmann, heir to the Holy Kingdom, appeared to condemn her for trampling the innocent. Vowing to make her pay for her sins, Cile charged at her with his holy sword. The holy power struck her, causing her immense pain as she clutched her chest. Cile's power weakened the seed's magic, giving her a moment of clarity to end it all. With desperate resolve, she screamed at him to kill her. He granted her wish, plunging his sword deep into her chest. As she bled, she weakly uttered Cile's name. Cile watched in disbelief as Princess Saraphina was enveloped in a brilliant, fading light. She fell, believing her death would save everyone, only to be jolted back to awareness by a familiar voice. A mage she recognized greeted her, asking if she slept well. Confused, she remembered being stabbed by Cile, yet this strange place felt undeniably familiar. The maid offered her a mirror to wash her face. Staring at her reflection, she saw the face of her younger self. The shocking truth hit her. She had turned back into a child. Her father, King Cile, entered her room with a warm smile, wishing his daughter Sarah a good morning. Stunned, the young princess calls out for her father. He asks what happened, but she dismisses it as a bad dream. As she insists she's fine, her father calls her name with concern. Bang! She stands frozen with a gasp, staring at the door. She realizes with dread that the Demon King's seed remains within her. As red energy swirls around her, she stares at her young reflection. The seed is small now, but she knows it will bloom again. Clenching her dress, she recognizes this as a second chance. A hopeful smile spreads across her face as she realizes her death can prevent the future tragedy. She reasons that her death can stop her father from becoming a tyrant. A determined look crosses her face as the dark energy surrounds her. She remembers her family's love, grateful for the chance to protect them. A man who looks like her father smirks, asking if she's awake. In disbelief, she questions if it's really her father. The terrifying thought hits her. Did she reincarnate again? She sits up in bed, looking around with wide, uncertain eyes. Her father looks at her with concern, asking if she feels sick. She quickly waves her hands, insisting that she's fine. Gazing into the mirror, her expression hardens with resolve. She wonders if she regresses every time she dies and decides she must test it. Her eyes widen in shock. Waking in her bed again, she realizes it has happened once more. The glowing gem on her bow pulses with faint power. She stands over the wash basin, hand to her chest in distress. A dark thought surfaces. It's the seed's obsession. Blood splatters across her vision as she remembers her past. Recalling the path of death she walked, she vows it will not happen again. Her face twists with rage and determination. Her expression suddenly shifts to one of wide-eyed surprise. She bursts out of her room in a hurry. A blonde-haired maid greets her with a gentle smile. Saraphina rushes forward, hugging the surprised maid. Tears stream down her face as she clings to the maid. She remembers killing this very person in her past life. Overwhelmed by grief and guilt, she continues to sob. The maid stands still as the small princess hugs her tightly. The maid gently chides her for staying up late, and she quietly agrees. Standing in a grand hall, the maid asks if she ate her vegetables. Wiping away a tear, Saraphina forces a smile and says yes. King Quellion appears before them with a stern expression. He angrily asks Madame Grey why Sarah was crying, threatening her. Saraphina runs to shield the maid, yelling at her papa not to be mean to Mom. The king is taken aback by her words. Saraphina looks up at him with tears in her eyes. Flustered, the king reassures her that it was all a misunderstanding. With newfound resolve, she decides to stop her father's tyranny and her own transformation. Saraphina sits at the head of a long dining table, attended by maids. A blonde-haired boy and another maid watch from the side. A servant places a dish on the table. The blonde boy grimaces with a nervous sweat. Saraphina finishes her meal quietly, shocking the staff as she declares dessert is canceled. Madame Grey questions the change, and Saraphina promises to be good from now on. A pleased Madame Grey asks about the day's schedule. The scene transitions to a grand view of the palace. From outside, voices gossip about the princess's sudden change. Inside a hallway, men discuss how even her instructor was moved to tears, wondering if she's grown up. Another man scoffs at the idea of her growing up. A smirking red-haired man believes the prophesied demon king princess has simply realized her precarious position. Two men flinch as the man alludes to talk of her isolation. The red-haired man continues his condescending speech. Madame Grey arrives, confronting the men for bad-mouthing the princess. A man greets the stern-faced Madame Grey. He argues it's the truth, but she counters that Saraphina's behavior is childish, not prophetic. Remembering a tantrum, Madame Grey explains that all children go through such phases. The red-haired man asks if she agrees with their plan, but she firmly refuses to imprison the princess, calling it abuse. The man scoffs, calling Madame Grey foolish. He questions her resolve, and she vows to sacrifice her own life to stop Saraphina if the prophecy comes true. With a bow, Madame Grey takes her leave. The man watches her go, thinking it's a shame. A dark-haired man on a throne thinks it was easier to manipulate people when the princess acted out, then asks his brother if he agrees. Madame Grey reports to the man on the throne that the princess no longer throws tantrums. She stands before him, her expression unreadable. The man on the throne considers her words thoughtfully. He observes that Madame Grey doesn't seem pleased by the news. She worries about the prophecy as she recalls the people's hatred for Saraphina. Madame Grey believes the princess's good behavior could change the court's opinion. The man on the throne dismisses the prophecy as nonsense. Looking at a family portrait, he recalls how he and Lucia hoped Saraphina's goodness would win people over. He remembers a fiery scene of destruction admitting he once hated himself enough to want to kill her. Back in her room, Saraphina lies thoughtfully on her bed. Her eyes flash open with determination. She sees this as a chance to learn about the Demon King while the seed whispers to her. A shadowy figure caresses her, representing the seed's influence on her possessions. She sits up with a jolt. Two nearby maids watch her, looking confused. Saraphina has an epiphany. The scene shifts to the exterior of a stately building. Saraphina walks purposefully down a library aisle. She scans the tall bookshelves, searching. Her maids are touched and surprised that the princess wants to visit the library. Saraphina gives a polite, almost shy bow. Her expression suddenly changes to one of surprise. Her eyes land on a book titled Behind the History. She hopes the book contains information about the Demon King. As she reaches for the book, a figure looms behind her. Her expression hardens as she senses someone's presence. She recognizes the red-haired twins who tormented her in her past life. A blood-splattered book reminds her that sibling rivalries are common throughout history. The dark-haired man from the throne appears behind one of the twins. She grimly recalls being seen as a political threat. One of the red-haired twins approaches, asking if she came for a book. She answers firmly that she wants to read. He taunts her about ripping books apart, but she calmly repeats her intention to read. In a painful memory, the twin frames her for tearing a book, feigning surprise as she's blamed. She remembers the crushing loneliness of being blamed for things she didn't do. Others whisper that she's a liar, destined to become the Demon King. Stealing her expression, she remembers hearing those words all the time. She points to a book high on the shelf which the twin notes is out of her reach. He looks utterly baffled by her calm demeanor. His panic grows as he wonders why she's being so quiet. Losing his composure, he grabs her arm and demands to know who she thinks she is. He sneers that no one will believe her, no matter what she says. She glares back at him, coolly contemplating her next move. A dark impulse whispers for her to simply kill him. The thought shifts to breaking his wrist as her demonic power surfaces. The twins stare back. Their faces a mixture of shock and fear. Enraged, the twin raises his hand to strike her. Her demonic eye flashes with contained power. Suddenly, a hand grabs the twin's wrist, stopping the blow as he cries out in pain. Saraphina looks up in utter surprise. Her dark-haired brother stands over them with an icy expression. She recognizes him as her brother, Johan del Rod Astria. The twins' denial is cut short by a swift, unseen blow. Johan kicks the red-haired bully to the ground. The two terrified twins cower on the floor before him. With a cold glare, Johan orders them to step back. The fallen twin looks up from the floor, trembling with fear. Johan stands protectively in front of Saraphina, who now holds her chosen book. She quietly realizes what she almost did before he arrived. Tightly clenching her fist, she suppresses her dangerous impulse. Johan glances back at her, his expression unreadable. She looks up at her stoic older brother, a silent question in her eyes. The two siblings stand opposite each other in the vast, quiet library. Breaking the silence, she gives him a brilliant, hopeful smile. Johan's cold expression remains completely unchanged. He turns away, telling her to go about her business. His blunt dismissal leaves her shocked and crestfallen. He leaves her standing alone in the long library aisle. The scene shifts to a mansion on a dark and rainy night. Inside, Johan lies sleeping in a simple bed. A thought reveals he is away from home, with 3 days left to reach the palace. A formal introduction names him Johan del Rod Astria, prince and heir to the throne. Born with a fragile body, he was unable to properly channel his magic. He recalls his parents doting on baby Saraphina, the child of prophecy, while he was ignored. He bitterly concludes that to his father, he is no different than a stranger. A flashback shows him preparing to leave a remote estate with his attendants. An attendant speaks to the young prince, whose expression is already cold and distant. A man in a suit gestures towards a desolate cobblestone path. A dark-haired girl with golden eyes stares forward with intensity. A memory of a joyful, smiling Saraphina appears. Waking, Johan wonders why she showed him such affection. With a creak, the doors to his grand bedroom open. He jolts awake in bed, asking who is there. She calmly announces her presence, identifying herself as Saraphina. She quickly runs toward his bedside. She asks about his condition, knowing the rain makes it worse. She offers her brother a genuinely warm smile. With a book in hand, she sweetly asks to read beside him, promising to be quiet. Taken aback by her kindness, Johan says he has a question. Saraphina beams and declares her affection for her brother. He reflects on their distant relationship, confused by her sudden warmth. She stands before him, waiting patiently for his answer. The scene transitions, focusing on the opulent bedroom. That night, a cloaked Saraphina prepares to sneak out, determined. She climbs onto the window ledge, ready to depart. She leaps from the high window into the stormy night. She races against time, seeking a special herb for her brother. She hopes curing him will convince him to stay at the palace. She runs through a dark forest under the full moon. Rain pours down as she ventures deeper into the woods. Her expression is fixed with unwavering resolve. She reaches a clearing, the rain falling heavily around her. She thinks to herself that it's been a while. The rare flower she seeks only grows on a rainy, full moon night where many have died. A fiery memory surfaces of assassins attacking and guards rushing to protect her. A young Saraphina cries for her mother, who begs her to live. Crying, she reaches for her mother while being carried away. Her small hand reaches out in desperation amidst the flames. Back in the present, she clenches her fist, haunted by the memory. Spotting the white flower, she whispers her mother's name. She quickly moves toward the precious flower. Glowing moths flicker in the dark forest before her. She laments that since her mother's death, the forest has become home to strange creatures. A glowing, fairy-like creature lets out a sinister giggle. She recognizes them as deadly night butterflies whose powder is extremely potent. Dismissing them as magical beasts, she unleashes a wave of power. The fairy-like creatures look on in shock. Her eyes glow as she grabs one, calling them useless. With dark power, she effortlessly destroys them, annoyed by the delay. As shadowy vines grasp at her feet, she worries about returning unnoticed. Monstrous tentacles rise behind her as she frets about the palace's reaction. Finally holding the flower, she hopes it can cure her brother. She smiles softly, knowing he might still dislike her. Her eyes flash red as she effortlessly cuts down attacking vines. She dodges a spray of green ooze from a hidden foe. Her eyes widen in alarm as she realizes the danger she's in. A powerful burst of flames erupts around Saraphina in the dark forest. Panicked, she realizes she must put out the rapidly spreading fire. A traumatic memory surfaces of a pink-haired woman screaming in a burning building. Saraphina's eyes widen in terror, the fire reflecting in them. Steeling herself, she resolves not to be afraid as the blaze intensifies. A monstrous, fanged creature rises from the fire as she focuses on her goal, the flower for her brother. She glances back with glowing red eyes, sensing the immense danger. The scene focuses on the white flower she seeks, untouched by the chaos. The view shifts to the grand palace under a rainy, moonlit sky. Inside, someone quietly flips through the pages of a book. Johan lies in bed reading, finally setting the book aside with a thud. He closes the book, unable to focus as he replays the day's events in his mind. Just as he decides to sleep, a frantic shout echoes through the palace. The princess has disappeared. Palace staff rush through the halls with lanterns, desperately calling for the princess. A hand slams down on a table as a voice orders the search party to be expanded. The king furiously commands that the entire palace be mobilized to find Sarah. Standing in a hallway, Johan observes the commotion, realizing his father gave the strict orders. He wonders bitterly if anyone would search this hard for him if he vanished. A memory of Saraphina's brilliant smile appears as she calls him brother. He sadly concludes that to their father, someone like him is nothing compared to her. With newfound determination, Johan turns and walks down the hall. He stops at a large window, looking out into the pouring rain. In a flashback, Saraphina calmly asks the now-tamed forest monster if it has a stomachache. The monster's vines are swiftly bound and sliced apart by an unseen force. She unleashes a powerful wave of fire to combat the forest's dark creatures. With a focused glare, she expertly manipulates the flames. She swings her arm, creating a sharp arc of energy that parts the blaze. She acknowledges that the Demon King's seed has made her entire being poisonous. She unleashes a wave of dark energy, knowing her poison is lethal to these beasts. Shaken from her thoughts, she urgently remembers her mission to get the flowers. To her relief, she finds the precious white flowers are completely undamaged. She gathers a bouquet, hoping it's enough to cure her brother's illness. Clutching the flowers, she smiles softly and knows she must hurry back. An attendant reports to the king that a search of the palace reveals no trace of the princess. The king covers his face in anguish, desperately wondering where Saraphina could be. He looks up to see his son, Johan, standing silently in the grand hall. Johan watches his father with an unreadable, stoic expression. His golden eyes are filled with a quiet intensity. The king approaches Johan, placing a heavy hand on his shoulder. The grip on Johan's shoulder is firm and commanding. Johan looks up at his father, then briefly closes his eyes. He places a hand to his chest and declares that he wants to find Sarah. The king stares, surprised by his son's unexpected resolve. Johan stands firm, his gaze unwavering and serious. The two stand opposite each other, a moment of understanding passing between them. The king's expression softens into a faint, approving smile. He grasps Johan's hand, entrusting the search to him and calling him, "My son." Johan accepts the responsibility with a solemn nod. As the king walks away, Johan is left to begin his search. The king glances back, his expression a mixture of worry and newfound hope. Rushing through the pouring rain, Johan frantically searches the garden. His face is twisted in a grimace of fear and determination. He recalls that his little sister grew up under constant threat of assassination. He desperately fears she's been kidnapped or attacked. He pushes himself to run faster through the storm. He laments that he was only just starting to get to know her. He finally stops, breathless, in a clearing. He spots a cloaked figure in the distance and shouts Saraphina's name, and she turns in shock, recognizing her brother. He rushes to her side, grabbing her shoulders and demanding to know where she's been, but she can only stammer. She thinks that she can't lie as his hand tightens on her cloak. She worries she's only made things worse when she just wanted to be a good girl. Johan looks down, noticing she's clutching something. He sees that she is holding a bouquet of white flowers. With her head down, she quietly apologizes to her brother. She explains the flowers from the garden might help his illness, leaving Johan stunned. He demands to know how on earth she could have known that. Flustered, Saraphina struggles to find an answer. She silently curses, closing her eyes in frustration. She fibs that an angel told her in a dream, but Johan replies with a skeptical, "What?" The moon shines brightly over a dark forest. He thinks, seeing through her flimsy excuse. Saraphina looks up at him, her expression tense. Johan looks down, his harsh expression softening slightly. She tearfully explains she just doesn't want him to be sick. She wants him to live a long and healthy life, and his eyes widen at her words. She cries that she doesn't want him to die, as a vision of her powerful, horned form appears. Johan is left speechless by her emotional plea. Just as he starts to speak, an urgent voice calls out both of their names. They both turn in surprise toward the sound. A man in a white uniform rushes toward them, flanked by attendants calling for the prince and princess. The man sweeps them both into a relieved hug. Johan is startled by the sudden, tight embrace. The man apologizes for leaving them, blaming their father, and says he's just glad they're safe. He tells a stunned Johan they can talk later and leads them both back to the palace. Inside the magnificent estate, gossip begins to spread. A maid cheerfully reports that Prince Johan's condition has visibly improved. Other maids agree, noting he seems peaceful and crediting the flower the princess brought him. One of the maids wonders aloud if the princess received a prophecy. Another maid replies with certainty that, of course, she did. The scene focuses on the princess's simple, elegant dress. A maid muses how someone like her could ever become the demon king as Saraphina stands in a grand hall. On a bright sunny day, a healthy Johan reads peacefully on a balcony. Saraphina runs into the room, excitedly calling for her brother. Johan looks at her with a gentle, warm smile. He happily tells her the medicine from her dream flower worked wonders on his mana sickness. Overjoyed, Saraphina says she heard they started researching the flower. Johan smiles and playfully raises a finger. He reveals they couldn't find the flower, so they're cultivating it with mana instead. She realizes with a happy blush that he named the flower after her without ever being told its name. Johan smiles and explains what she can ask for now. Saraphina's eyes sparkle with pure delight. A dark voice from her past promises her everything, urging her to just ask. She is left momentarily stunned and speechless by the memory. Saraphina suddenly stands, startling a seated Johan. She bursts into a bright, joyous laugh. Johan watches her sudden outburst with a bewildered expression. He offers to walk her to the study room, and she eagerly thanks her brother. As they walk away together, she thinks that something feels different. A vision of her laughing in a field of flowers reflects her happiness. The scene shifts to a dark, candlelit corridor, setting a sinister tone. In the shadows, two cloaked figures discuss the princess's improving reputation and rumors of a divine prophecy. A third figure dismisses the rumors, insisting the princess is the demon king's seed and must be eliminated. A red-haired man in a hood smirks, his name revealed as Theodore. Theodore calmly states it's too soon to worry, as the princess's upcoming blessing ceremony will be their chance. Their plan will unfold according to the divine will, guided by the Pope of Zara in a grand cathedral. The scene transitions to the sunlit palace gardens. Inside, Johan stands before a table adorned with the white flowers. He gently holds a single flower, lost in thought. He recalls Saraphina's tearful wish for him to live a long, healthy life. A small, fond smile crosses his face as he thinks to himself, "You fool." He remembers she ventured out despite being afraid of the dark, recalling an image of her as a small child. He wonders if her actions were an attempt to change her fate. He pictures her trapped within a cage of glowing blue thorns. In a moment of empathy, he sees himself reflected in her dark world. He envisions her smiling brightly, free among the flowers. Touched by this realization, Johan smiles with quiet understanding. An unseen official decides to rename the flower Seraphine to prevent misuse. The king appears, sternly asking about the fate of the assassin. An attendant bows low before him, ready to report. The king rubs his temple, sighing that he is sick of the constant threats. From above, the attendant confirms the matter was handled quietly. An aide reports to the king that scholars found no historical record of a Zira prophecy ever being overturned. He hands the grim report to the king. The king somberly reads over the document. Just then, the aide announces that the princess has requested an audience. The king's heavy mood instantly lifts, replaced by a radiant smile. Saraphina peeks into the room, calling out for her father. He warmly welcomes his daughter, calling her Sarah. Overjoyed, Saraphina runs eagerly toward her father's open arms. The king lifts his little princess into a loving embrace. He thinks furiously of the attempt to harm such a delicate child. Gazing at her, he vows to do anything to protect her. He resolves to conquer Zira, believing he can change the prophecy by force. Saraphina looks up and sees the dangerous look on his face. She realizes with horror that her father is thinking of starting a war. She recalls that in her past life, he made a similar, devastating choice. To protect her, he had invaded every nation that sought to kill her. The result was a full-scale war between their empire and the Zira alliance. She panics internally, realizing she has failed to stop the war again. Clinging to his sleeve, She resolves to stop her father's plan for war. He looks down, asking his daughter what is wrong. Saraphina looks up with wide, innocent eyes, searching for a believable excuse. The memory of her father holding her, as Johan watched, flashes through her mind. She fibs that a sad book about war history upset her, leaving him confused. Declaring she hates warmongering kings, she shocks her father into silence. The king breaks into a cold sweat, unsettled by his daughter's words. She kisses his cheek, cheerfully telling him to do his best with work. As she skips away, she leaves her stunned father and a worried attendant behind. Once alone, she sighs in relief, her desperate plan having worked for now. She thinks that her father will stay on guard as long as assassins appear. Walking between two guards, she wonders if she should deal with the assassins herself. Her thoughts are interrupted as she looks up in surprise. A large group of knights bows in unison, greeting the princess. She beams, charmed by their hard work and dedication. Seeing so many knights, she thinks her father is being far too overprotective. A knight asks his companion about the person standing behind him. Her eyes widen as a newly recruited knight is introduced. She stares in shock as the knight, Dior in gray, bows respectfully. A painful memory surfaces of a dying knight pierced with arrows. The vision is replaced by the new knight's warm, gentle smile. She remembers him from her past life as Dior, her loyal knight and shield. A shattered mirror reflects her dark past, recalling his sacrifice was deemed unworthy. A chaotic flashback shows a battle and her horned form falling. She sees a vision of Dior shielding her with his body, taking arrows meant for her. He looks down at her horned form with a pained, sorrowful expression. A blood-stained flower symbolizes how his heroic sacrifice was twisted into disgrace. The narration recalls how the Demon King fled and lived on, unable to die. Snapped out of her thoughts, she looks up as someone calls her name. She cheerfully greets Sir Dior, explaining she heard he'd be her escort. Blushing slightly, Dior confirms that his mother informed him of his duty. She happily takes the knight's hand. Dior flushes beet red, completely flustered by her forwardness. With a bright smile, she invites him to have tea with her. The knight stammers, saying he couldn't possibly accept her offer. Another knight intervenes, stating it's in order and he will reschedule Dior's training. Saraphina thanks the other knight and excitedly pulls a flustered Dior away. The scene shifts to a grand, ornate palace staircase. At the bottom of the stairs, two red-haired servants look up apprehensively. The two servants exchange a nervous glance. A black-haired aide with stern yellow eyes addresses the prince off-screen. The aide smirks, noting that the prince's confinement has finally ended. The two red-haired servants look up in alarm. An unseen Johan coldly asks one of the servants which hand he used to strike Saraphina. Suddenly, the aide shoves one of the servants, sending him tumbling down the stairs. The servant screams as he falls. His companion cries out his name, Morgan, and demands to know what the prince is doing, but Johan calmly asks him to repeat the question. The aide coolly suggests calling for help, claiming Morgan simply tripped and fell. The remaining servant furiously accuses the prince of pushing his brother. Johan asks if the servant is now trying to frame him, leaving the man speechless with fear. The aide coldly asks if they truly thought harming the princess would result in mere confinement. The scene shifts to a vast, ornate, and empty bedroom. She fondly recalls a vision of Dior's gentle and loyal smile. With newfound resolve, she vows that this time, she won't let tragedy happen. She identifies the true problem, the approaching purification ritual. She fears the ceremony will expose her as the Demon King. While she can control her magic, she worries the holy power will make the seed react. Realizing refusal is too suspicious, she feels confident in her plan. As the scene shifts to a grand estate, she declares she's already prepared. A royal carriage, escorted by knights, travels down a winding forest road. A white horse leads the way. The carriage and its retinue proceed on their journey. Upon stopping, a blonde attendant announces their arrival to the princess. Dressed in a formal white gown and veil, Saraphina appears serene, yet determined. Two priests standing nearby wonder if the princess has changed. Saraphina presents herself with a graceful curtsy. Two priests nervously welcome her and her attendant, Emma, to the temple. From a distance, two knights on horseback observe their arrival. One of the knights playfully tells Sir Dioran he must be nervous for his first time. Dioran turns his head, a little flustered by the comment. The other knight notes how different she is, remembering how she used to cry during the ritual. Dioran watches the princess with a look of deep concern. He lowers his gaze, beginning to speak his thoughts. His confused companion asks him what he means. Dioran suggests she's not changed, but is simply holding back her pain and tears. The other knight laughs, teasing that Dioran is completely smitten with the adorable princess. Having dismounted, Dioran formally introduces himself as her assigned escort for the day. Saraphina is surprised, thinking a senior knight is usually chosen for this duty. The royal party walks through a grand, sunlit colonnade. They arrive at a large, pristine pool of water inside the temple. She thinks about the upcoming ritual as they stand before the baptismal font. She recalls the ritual, being submerged in holy water while priests pray. She thinks that her past struggles with breathing are no longer the problem. The demonic seed is. Saraphina suddenly collapses into her attendant's arms, claiming to feel dizzy as Emma calls her name in alarm. Emma suggests they postpone the ceremony, supporting the seemingly weak princess. Dioran gently scoops her up, carrying her in his arms. He looks down at the princess with a worried and concerned expression. Saraphina now rests in a bed, watched over by Emma and Dioran. From her bed, Saraphina gives Emma a bright, reassuring smile. Emma tells Dioran to step outside so the princess can rest properly. Saraphina interrupts, telling Emma that she'd like Dioran to stay. Agreeing, Emma instructs Dioran to call for help if the princess's condition worsens. Dioran stands alone in the room, quietly watching over the princess. Lying in bed, she thinks to herself that he is as proper as ever. He politely tells the princess that he is fine standing. She invites him to sit down, catching him slightly off guard. Relenting, he takes a seat in the chair beside her bed. As he sits, he thinks to himself that this moment reminds him of the old days. A flashback shows a young girl trying and failing to surprise a stoic, brown-haired man. In the present, the brown-haired man looks up in surprise. The pink-haired girl lying in bed addresses him as Sir Dioran, mentioning his nickname Dio. Dioran smiles fondly, confirming his family calls him that. He sits by her bed, agreeing to whatever she wishes. A memory flashes of a smiling woman calling his name, Dio. Lying down, the pink-haired girl looks up thoughtfully. Dioran looks down at her and gives a formal reply. She suddenly turns her head with a look of alarm. Boom! A fiery explosion erupts outside the palace walls. Dioran flinches, startled by the sudden blast. The room shakes violently from the force of the explosion. Dioran quickly scoops the princess into his arms, yelling that they must escape. He sprints through a large doorway, carrying her to safety. As they flee down a long hall, he realizes it's an assassin's attack. The narration explains the temple is considered an inviolable, sacred space. However, a vision shows the princess surrounded by a dragon, warning of a broken treaty. A demonic silhouette of the princess declares it's the perfect chance to kill her. Dioran continues his desperate run through the crumbling corridor. Cradled in his arms, the princess thinks this attack conveniently delays her consecration ceremony. A blonde-haired woman in a purple dress rushes toward them. She points the way, telling them she knows the back door for their escape. She leads them at a run down the opulent hallway. As she points to the exit, she yells that the back door is just ahead. The doors in front of them explode into splinters. The trio stares in shock at the blocked escape route. Their path is now blocked by a group of cloaked assassins. The princess considers using her magic but hesitates, not wanting to be exposed. An assassin points his sword, ordering his men to eliminate the blonde woman first. A bright light flares up in the hall. A sword slices through the air toward the blonde woman. An assassin cries out as his blade is blocked by the woman's magically infused sword. With a fierce expression, she stands her ground as the assassins realize she's a swordmaster. An assassin recognizes her origins from Lorem just before he's cut down. The blonde-haired woman stands poised, her sword glowing with power. She steps forward to confront the remaining assassins. The princess recalls the legend of a famous swordsman who vanished after the war. The woman engages the assassins as the princess wonders how the kingdom's best swordsman is here. The blonde woman's gaze is sharp and deadly serious. The princess is stunned that her father would hire a sword master as a nanny. The nanny gracefully evades an assassin's strike while preparing a counterattack. With the assassins defeated, the princess realizes her father orchestrated this. A memory shows her younger self targeted by a red laser. Dior carries the princess past the victorious nanny. The nanny stands guard as more cloaked figures watch from the shadows. 2 more assassins appear in a narrow brick-lined alley. An assassin lunges forward, about to call out to the princess. In a stylized frame, the princess shields a wounded Dior. An assassin leaps down, aiming a strike at Dior's back. Dior spins around, shielding the princess with his own body. Saraphina smiles, asking the brown-haired man if he is all right. Relieved, he tells her to close her eyes as they escape. Flashes of brilliant green light slice through the dark hallway. Holding her, the man stands over fallen enemies with his glowing sword. An ominous voice calls out her name, "Hey, Sarah." The voice suggests they can end this by killing them all. A demonic shadow urges Saraphina to use her power. Closing her eyes, she forcefully tells the voice to shut up. They arrive at a large, barred gate blocking their escape. A bright blue light envelops them in a teleportation spell. The man's green eye scans their new, unfamiliar surroundings. Arriving in a rocky wasteland, he expresses his shock at the location. As he wonders about the spell, she senses an ominous energy. Her eyes narrow, alert to the unseen danger. The barren landscape stretches out before them under an orange sky. The brown-haired man voices his suspicion about the teleportation spell. Noticing him falter, she asks if he can put her down. He smiles through the pain, insisting it's nothing. Saraphina calls him Dio, insisting he put her down so he won't get hurt. Dio looks conflicted by her logical plea. He relents, gently setting her on her feet. Dio looks at her with a surprised and concerned expression. Saraphina turns away from him with a determined look. She begins bandaging his arm as he protests that she'll get dirty. He says he's fine, but she angrily insists he is not. She thinks of how he's already risking his life to protect her. Internally, she calls him a mess while wrestling with her own conflicting feelings. As she finishes, Dio quietly thanks her. He gives her a warm, slightly blushing smile. Saraphina lets out a weary sigh, looking troubled. Standing together, she asks him what their next move is. Dio's expression hardens as he assesses their dangerous situation. He concludes they're in a monster nest and will also face assassins. They stand together, ready to face the coming threat. Saraphina maintains a calm and unreadable expression. She imagines a scenario where she easily defeats their enemies herself. Dio notes her incredible calmness in the face of danger. Panicked, she suddenly wonders if she acted too calm. She worries that her lack of fear might make her seem suspicious. Dio watches her with a thoughtful and steady gaze. He turns his attention back to the path ahead. A small, knowing smile touches Saraphina's lips. She stands resolute as the wind blows through her hair. She reflects that people hate her crying, calling her a strange child. She recalls a past of cold, cutting stares and constant judgment. Accepting her fate, she thinks that's just how things should be. Dio kneels before her, gently taking her hand in his. Saraphina looks down at him, her expression serious and distant. She warns Dio that he wouldn't like her if he saw her throw a fit. When she asks if he would still stay, he firmly answers that he would. She looks ahead, her expression hardening with resolve. Dio kneels, vowing to always revere her as his princess. His words seem to leave her speechless, her face cast in shadow. In a brief flash of joy, she beams with a radiant smile. Thump! Dio's eyes widen in shock as he begins to collapse. As he lies unconscious, she decides she'll just pretend to pass out too. She steals her expression, agreeing to her own plan. Her resolve is set as visions show approaching assassins and dark magic. She collapses to the ground, feigning unconsciousness. With glowing red eyes, she commands unseen monsters to get lost, vaporizing them instantly. She stands confidently, surrounded by an ethereal aura of swords. The shadowy monsters are completely obliterated by her power. The dust settles, revealing the now empty, desolate landscape. She lies still on the ground, resuming her act. Hooded assassins gather around her, with one suggesting they kill her to simplify their mission. An assassin draws a glowing red sword, ready to strike. He swings the blade down toward her neck. Clang! He's violently thrown back by an invisible force, shocking his comrades. The remaining assassins curse, realizing she has a magic tool. The thrown assassin looks up in stunned disbelief. A mysterious voice taunts the assassins for falling for the trick. Saraphina stands calmly on the back of the fallen assassin. Staring in terror, he wonders what kind of magic she's using. She coolly considers what to do with them, pondering the nature of evil and killing. Believing her magic has limits, the assassins charge forward to restrain her. A blinding light erupts from her, stopping them in their tracks. She remembers her past life, never discovering who sent these assassins. With grim determination, she vows that this time, she'll find out. An assassin spots her bracelet, shouting that it's the magic tool and must be destroyed. She breaks into a wide, sinister grin. This is fun, she thinks, her reflection a demonic shadow with glowing red eyes. As their screams echo, she decides a simple death is too boring and will play longer. She turns, her expression cold and filled with deadly intent. An assassin grabs Dio, holding a blade to his throat. Saraphina appears in a flash, her voice deadly serious as she orders him released. The assassin trembles, realizing her immense power is no mere tool. She walks toward him, her calm demeanor unsettling. With a sharp glance, she prepares to move. Whoosh! She dodges a sweeping sword attack with incredible speed. A cut appears on her cheek and her eyes blaze with fury. A demonic shadow appears, mirroring her unleashed rage. "Did you hurt him?" she asks, as a massive shockwave of power explodes from her. With a murderous thought, she unleashes her power, tearing through the assassins. Ignoring an assassin's plea for mercy, she coldly reminds him of his intent to kill her. She sadly concludes that no matter what she does, the world will always hate her. Her rampage over, she stands alone, breathing heavily with a pained expression. A memory surfaces of Dio reaching for her as she thinks about killing him, wondering why it feels familiar. She recalls his face, a face she once wanted to protect. Trembling, she whispers the name, Dio Ren. Ha! She scoffs in disbelief at her blood-soaked hand, the ground around her covered in gore. Her heart pounds with sudden shock. She stands opposite Dioran in a dreamlike memory. Flinching, she hears him address her formally. She hesitates, struggling to find her words. He gently takes her hand in his. Stunned, she looks up at him. He offers her a gentle, reassuring smile. An off-screen voice asks if she witnessed his actions. A memory of Johan's cruel smirk flashes in her mind. The memory shifts back to her and Dioran. He stands before her, a vision of chivalry. Overwhelmed with emotion, her eyes fill with tears. She suddenly throws her arms around him. He returns the hug, patting her back comfortingly. With quiet resolve, she holds him tight. She recalls the destructive power she once wielded. She vows to protect him this time. The scene shifts to an opulent hall as a voice calls for Madame Grey. The king thanks Madame Grey for his daughter's safe return. Madame Grey humbly accepts the king's gratitude, stating it was her duty. The king holds a sealed letter, his offer made. As she begs him to reconsider, he challenges her resolve. The king lets out a weary sigh. A tense distance separates them in the grand room. Madame Grey maintains her determined expression. He smirks, confident in her influence. He takes his seat, asserting his authority. He grimly reports the assassin is dead, leaving no trail. She listens intently, standing in the quiet room. She reveals a crucial flaw in the assassin's escape plan. His eyes gleam with sudden, sharp realization. He thoughtfully considers her words. His hand tightens into a fist. He grimly concludes they have a traitor. Meanwhile, Saraphina collapses, writhing in magical agony. The demonic seed's power overwhelms her, causing immense pain. She realizes the seed's will is terrifyingly strong. Lying exhausted, she stares at her hand. She recalls losing control when attacked by the twins and the assassin. Frustrated, she buries her face in her pillow. Desperate, she resolves to find a solution. A memory of the temple's holy water gives her an idea. She bolts upright with a sudden realization. She flails around in a moment of frantic thought. She remembers the seed's power diminished at the temple. She wonders if sacred relics and holy water could be the answer. They might not be perfect, but it's a start. An image of a priest's robe comes to mind. Her expression hardens with renewed purpose. Her gaze is fixed on her new plan. Beaming with excitement, she clenches her fist with renewed determination. The black-haired aide stands stunned, holding a frilly pink dress. Completely bewildered, he stammers, trying to address her. The king gravely considers that Sarah is getting married, a revelation that sends the aide reeling in shock. Later, the aide sits beside her grand canopy bed. Saraphina sits up, watching him with a calm, serious expression. He thinks about the marriage, finding it absurd as he pictures her laughing childishly. A vision appears of a silver-haired warrior named Gabriel Ertmann. She recalls that fighting Gabriel alone was a monumental challenge. The aide calls out to his brother in distress, struggling to process the news of the marriage, thinking it's a bigger shock than expected, while Saraphina watches him with a sly smirk. A painful memory surfaces of her smiling through tears and blood. Lying in bed, she wonders what the man in her memory was trying to say with his shocked expression. She remembers his expression held no joy, relief, or peace. A vision of a sad white-haired man appears among flowers. Back in the present, the black-haired aide clenches his fists, resolved. Ha! He sighs, rubbing his forehead in frustration. He recalls his fruitless search for information on the Demon King. He concludes that relics are only a temporary solution to the seed. Saraphina thanks him, revealing his research taught her the Demon King appeared 500 years ago. The narration suggests that the heir, Gabriel, might hold the answers. Saraphina looks up with sudden, hopeful realization. She and her brother stand before a pair of ornate doors. Their father opens the doors, asking if everything is all right. Saraphina greets him with a cheerful smile, reassuring her father. He hands her a folded white priest's robe. He gently drapes the holy garment over her shoulders. Wrapped in the robe, she looks up at her father and brother. The two men share a look, agreeing this is a serious matter. Saraphina stands dressed in the long, consecrated robe. She happily declares that wearing it directly is more effective. Her brother asks their father how they can acquire more. The aide turns his head sharply, struck by an idea. The three of them stand together in the ornate room. The aide announces a way to get more relics from Zira. The scene shifts to a grand hall lined with knights. A young brown-haired knight walks down the ceremonial carpet. He kneels respectfully before Princess Saraphina. She gently pins a jeweled medal onto his uniform. She formally bestows the medal as proof of his loyalty. The medal gleams, a symbol of his bravery and service. A close-up shows the ornate, shining medal on his chest. She touches a sword to his shoulder, asking him to be her knight for life. The knight looks up, his face bright with a devoted smile. Saraphina looks down at him with a soft, pleased smile. Her expression becomes a wide, triumphant grin. A thought declares that he alone will be her knight. She jerks upright in bed, snapping out of the memory. Ha! She sighs with relief and lies back down. Looking up, she sees the brown-haired knight smiling down at her. She sits up on the bed, greeting him with a delighted expression. The brown-haired knight gives a warm, heartfelt smile. Saraphina cheekily asks to use his lap as a pillow. Her bold request leaves the young knight standing stiffly in shock. He wonders nervously if it's truly okay to be so close. Hearing his thoughts, she lets out a delighted laugh. She rests her head on his lap, and he smiles down at her. Looking up from his lap, she beams with pure happiness. He feels incredibly honored, questioning if he deserves this, as she declares he's her only knight. Her words bring a soft, pleased blush to his face. His gentle reaction seems to surprise her. The two share a quiet moment on the couch. She reaches a hand toward him, her expression softening. Her hand is poised gently in the air. Elsewhere, Saraphina, her brother, and her father stand together. The aide suggests they host a marriage competition, predicting Zira will send a holy relic as a gift. The king weighs the risks, deciding the demonic seed is a greater threat than potential assassins. He worries that revealing her powers would bring her nothing but more torment from the world. The aide thinks grimly of the death threats she already faces. Trembling with conviction, the aide vows she will never allow the princess to marry. Back on the couch, Saraphina looks up, suddenly alert. The knight stands over her, his expression serious. He looks down with a pained and worried gaze. In a flash of memory, she giggles playfully in his lap. She smiles, but inwardly knows the truth. She must hide her magic and show no weakness. Her hands clench the fabric of her dress. Her gaze hardens as she thinks, I don't believe in this affection. A young, white-haired boy in formal robes walks through a sunlit hall. The white-haired boy appears sad and lonely amidst a frame of flowers. Knock, knock. He raises his hand to a grand door. The door opens, and he gestures for two older figures to enter. An elderly priest smiles warmly, thinking how much the boy has grown. The boy bows his head respectfully before the elder. A silver-haired man welcomes him, stating he's just in time for the engagement ceremony. The boy looks up, his eyes wide with surprise. The silver-haired man closes his eyes, thinking he might be pushing the boy too hard. Invitations are sent out from the Grand Palace. The silver-haired man looks on with a troubled expression. He looks down at the boy, who appears withdrawn and unhappy. A mysterious hooded figure insists that the greater good must come first. The silver-haired man reacts with stunned disbelief. He firmly denies being engaged or having feelings for anyone. His face flushes as he looks completely flustered by the topic. The young boy looks up, seemingly concerned by the man's strong reaction. The scene shifts to a grand ball, with nobles gathered below a balcony. Guests in elegant attire mingle and converse in the hall. A close-up reveals a man wearing a distinctive spider brooch. A young man, introduced as Prince Benjamin, notes the tense atmosphere. He recalls dark rumors about Astria's demon king, a child of violent and cruel nature, as an image shows a fallen soldier. The rumors continue, a torture chamber for the princess, who some call a half-beast monster. Prince Benjamin thoughtfully considers the troubling stories he has heard. A dark-haired boy declares his displeasure with the arranged marriage. The scene introduces a smug, blonde-haired boy, Romeo, Prince of Tanracola. Next, a stern, white-haired boy is introduced, Kian, Prince of Ezhar. An announcer heralds the arrival of King Quellion and Princess Saraphina, surprising the three princes. The sound of steady footsteps echoes through the grand hall. A handsome man with dark hair enters, carrying a small, pink-haired girl. The girl, Saraphina, offers a sweet, slightly blushing smile. The onlooking crowd is immediately captivated by her charming appearance. The dark-haired prince looks up at her, blushing in stunned silence. He internally recalls her reputation for having a rotten personality despite her looks. He suspects her adorable face has committed unspeakable acts. An angelic vision of Saraphina appears, complete with white wings. She beams with an overwhelmingly bright and innocent smile. The crowd swoons, calling her adorable as the dark-haired prince blushes furiously. Internally, Saraphina smugly notes how easily she's fooled everyone. Princes Romeo and Kian also stare, blushing in complete shock. Her sweet expression vanishes as Saraphina's gaze turns sharp and observant. Thump. Her heart pounds as she clutches her chest. A line of stoic priests stands with their arms crossed. The king and Saraphina stand before the assembled crowd and suitors. A white-haired boy with piercing blue eyes stands before them. Saraphina stares in utter shock, recognizing the boy as Cile. A weathered memory flashes of an older Cile drawing his sword. Grasping her dress, she wonders why Cile is here instead of Gabriel. She exchanges a look with the king, who glances back at her. She imagines herself in a wedding dress beside Cile, dreading the possibility of marrying him. A man explains that Cile's strong holy power can suppress the seed. Saraphina clenches her fist, questioning the situation. As she looks at Cile, she suddenly feels an overwhelming wave of nausea. In an empty hall, a thought wonders which prince she will marry. A maid smiles while working in a sunlit room. Another maid happily joins her, carrying a vase of blue flowers. The maids gossip, sure that one of the princes fell in love at first sight. They also comment on how striking the prince from Tolerantia was. The maids continue their work in the vast, elegant room. Saraphina stands with a calm, composed expression. The dark-haired prince from Tolerantia grits his teeth with determination. He is introduced as the sixth prince of Tolerantia, with slim chances of inheriting the throne. Believing this is his only chance, he plots to use the young princess, seeing himself as a puppeteer. He schemes to become her consort to control her and gain immense power. The sixth prince approaches a large, ornate wooden chest. Opening the chest reveals rows of potions. He grabs one, determined to become her fiancé. The scene shifts to a bright, beautifully manicured garden. A black-haired woman with yellow eyes smiles gently while holding a teacup. She has tea with Saraphina and another woman in a garden gazebo. Saraphina recalls an excessively long letter from the king, finding it overwhelming. The black-haired woman looks utterly exhausted from staying up for days. Gripping her sword, she states they only have 1 year to find a solution. Saraphina thinks about her original plan, to fix her condition while the suitor stayed. She holds the bow on her dress, lost in thought. She doubts she can solve the Demon King's power in just a year. Her brother frets, vowing to prevent her marriage to protect her. As her brother plots darkly against her suitors, she frantically tries to change the subject. Her brother sighs, running a hand through his hair in frustration. She looks at him with a knowing smile, asking if he understands. Her brother admits he wants to imprison all her suitors, a thought that startles him. He sadly expresses his pain at seeing her forced into a loveless marriage. He gently takes her hand to comfort her. He vows she will find someone she truly loves. She reflects grimly that the entire world wants her dead. Her gaze hardens with determination. Hearing his words, she breaks into a cheerful laugh. They seal their promise with linked pinkies. She beams, her eyes full of playful determination. She playfully asks if she can keep her pinky, and her brother shouts, "Absolutely not." As he tries to leave, she grabs his sleeve, pleading for him to stay. He promises to visit again, and she happily agrees they had fun. After he leaves, a sudden thought strikes her. Madame Grey asks if she's all right, but the princess dismisses her concern. She stands thoughtfully, pondering her sudden realization. The scene shifts to another grand, imposing palace. An open window offers a glimpse inside. A young, white-haired boy stands alone in a sunlit hall. The view pulls back, showing Saraphina and her brother in the garden gazebo. He resolves that she must be eliminated before the demonic seed can sprout. His formal robes signify his important position. He peeks from behind a door, observing the room beyond. The scene shifts to a grand, sun-drenched cathedral. A hand rests on his shoulder as a voice reminds him that punishing evil is their duty. A dark premonition shows a shadowy hand reaching for a robed figure. A vision appears of a wedding dress, ornate and white. Saraphina stands as a bride, her expression somber against a blood-red backdrop. A hand reaches out, beckoning to the solemn bride. The groom is revealed to be a handsome, silver-haired man in a white suit. As their hands touch, she falls backward as if into a trap. The grand cathedral is eerily empty for the ceremony. They stand at the altar, their hands clasped together. Suddenly, the altar is replaced by a gleaming guillotine. She kneels before the blade, her groom standing impassively beside her. Clang. A final moment of light as the blade falls. Saraphina jolts awake in bed, gasping in terror. She clutches her nightgown, trying to calm her racing heart. She looks around her room, breathing a sigh of relief. She realizes with relief that it was only a dream. She clutches the sheets, unsettled, noting she hasn't dreamt since returning to the past. She lies alone in her vast, opulent bedroom. The next morning, a maidservant brushes her hair at the vanity. The maid reminds her of an appointment with Lord Cile, and Saraphina mentally prepares for the intense meeting. The maid helps her into an elegant dress for the occasion. She walks with the tall man down a sunlit corridor, heading to the meeting. The aide thinks he should commend Saraphina's suitors. Her expression hardens with resolve. A young, white-haired boy waits alone by a sunlit window. He formally greets Princess Saraphina of Astria. She responds with a bright, welcoming smile. Her aide and another servant pull out chairs for the two. Tea is poured for the white-haired boy. The doctrines of Zira's priest demand a pure and modest life. Saraphina eyes the lavish tray of sweets with uncertainty. The boy admits he's never had sweets before. She's shocked, thinking this is too harsh for a 12-year-old. They sit in an awkward silence, broken only by her tentative bite. Clink. The silence at the table continues. Unable to bear it, she cheerfully breaks the silence, asking why he came instead of Lord Gabriel. He stares back at her with a flat, emotionless expression. Internally, she fumes, wondering if he's a robot, and calling the tea party torture. She forces another cheerful laugh. She eagerly suggests they take a walk in the garden. The aide holds a parasol over her as they walk with the boy. She closes her eyes, thinking the garden's flowers feel restorative. Looking at the boy, she realizes he looks just as he did in her past life. A vision of his older, silver-haired self flashes beside him. She dismisses the thought, recalling they only met on the battlefield. She turns to him, her expression brightening once more. He bluntly asks which of her suitors she wishes to marry. His direct question leaves her blushing and speechless. They stand facing each other in the sunny garden. She turns her head, looking away from him. She wonders if people usually ask such personal questions so directly. She laughs nervously, deflecting the question. She looks down, her expression becoming more serious. Her aide reminds her that the king wishes for her to meet someone who brings her flowers. The white-haired boy watches her with a neutral gaze. The scene focuses on a lush bush of white flowers. He turns and walks away without another word. She watches his retreating back, feeling disheartened. She concludes that he must not like her. She takes a step forward. She decides she was the one who was rude to him. Whomp! Back inside, she flops onto a chaise lounge in frustration. Her aide looks on in alarm as a small, pink spirit appears over her. He watches her sulk on the chaise lounge. She peeks over the edge of the pillow with a pout. The aide observes her with a thoughtful smile. A white flower suddenly appears in her line of sight, startling her. The aide smiles warmly, offering her the single daisy. She gently accepts the flower from his hand. Holding the simple gift, she breaks into a genuinely happy smile. The aide looks at her with a kind and gentle expression. Kneeling before her, the aide promises to bring a big bouquet next time. She peacefully closes her eyes, enjoying the sweet scent of the daisy. The scene shifts to an outside view of her resting by the window. Overcome with drowsiness, she lets out a big yawn. She sleepily reaches out a hand towards the aide. He gently catches her as she falls into a deep sleep. He lifts her carefully into his arms. He carries the sleeping princess over to her bed. With a tender smile, he gently tucks her in. She sleeps peacefully on her pillow. Suddenly, a dark dream begins as a shadowy hand reaches for her. A mysterious voice questions why she tries to endure everything. As a hand covers her eyes, The voice says everything has been prepared. Her hand clenches as she silently tells the voice to shut up. The voice urges her to claim her power, but she cries out as her head hurts. The voice mocks her pathetic act as her red eye glares defiantly. A shadowy child's form flashes amidst swirling light. Lying in bed, her eyes snap open, glowing a menacing red. The aide Dio turns, sensing a change, and asks if someone just came by. She immediately sits up and gets out of bed. Creak. She pushes open the door, sensing a familiar energy. She looks up to find someone waiting in the hall. The white-haired boy stands before her, his expression neutral. He bows his head slightly, as if to greet her. She reassures him that she is fine and just woke up. He presents her with a large bouquet of white flowers. The bouquet is filled with beautiful, fragrant white lilies. She looks down at the flowers with a somber expression. She clasps her hands together nervously. Putting on a bright smile, she asks what the flowers are for. The white-haired boy looks down, hesitating to answer. Her expression sobers as she gazes intently. What? Her eyes widen with a sudden, shocking realization. She connects the flowers to a startling new thought. The boy continues to hold out the lilies, awaiting her response. The scene transitions to a room filled with vases of beautiful flowers. She looks on with a hard, determined glare. Later, she tells Madame Grey that it's nothing to worry about. She reflects that after that day, he brought flowers every day. A memory shows him presenting another unique bouquet from florists outside the capital. Madame Grey smiles, seemingly pleased by this development. Saraphina sighs, complaining that his blank expression makes tea parties feel like talking to a portrait. The scene flashes back to a younger, pouting Saraphina with her arms crossed. A maid bows her head apologetically. The young princess looks up with a confused expression. A dark-haired man appears, joyfully calling out, "Sarah." She laughs and runs into her father's arms as he lifts her into the air. She looks up at her father with a bright, adoring smile. He notes that she seemed to be in a deep discussion with his secretary. Her father's expression turns serious as he considers her words. He stands with the young princess in the grand, silent hall. Kneeling before her, he asks for her thoughts on sending Zera's delegation back. The question catches Saraphina completely off guard. He explains that Emma testified the temple attackers moved suspiciously fast. The investigation points to an inside collaborator among the clergy. Saraphina's eyes widen as she understands the grave implication. The truth is revealed. The Church of Zera was behind the attack. She realizes Zera's hostility is far more severe than anyone expected. She braces herself, knowing she must consider the worst-case scenario. Her thoughts immediately turn to the white-haired boy, Cile. She had dismissed the danger, thinking him just a 12-year-old boy. Her expression sets with grim determination. She wonders aloud at the sheer insanity of Zera's actions. Her father assures her they will investigate Zera more thoroughly. He takes her small hand in his own. His eyes are filled with worry as he looks at his daughter. She offers him a small, reassuring smile. She closes her eyes, projecting an aura of calm confidence. He gently covers her hand, offering his protection. With a cunning smile, she suggests a new plan. Use herself as bait. Horrified, her father immediately rejects the idea, declaring, "I'm not bait." She thinks of her loyal allies, her brother and Emma. She stands proudly, radiating a soft, determined glow. She smiles brightly, confident that no one would dare attack inside the palace. Her father's worried expression shows he isn't convinced. His hand reaches out toward her. Wah! He pulls her into a sudden, desperate hug. He holds her close, lamenting the burdens she must carry. She quietly accepts her fate, knowing it simply because she was born. A painful memory surfaces of the day her father and brother died. She knows that if she dies, she'll just regress, making the demonic seed grow faster. She clings to him, stealing her resolve. She can never die. She hugs him back tightly, strengthening her father's resolve. Her plan is revealed. The other suitors are a smokescreen for Cile. The scene shifts as she walks with her aide down a bright corridor. Her pink hair flows as she walks with purpose. She and her aide proceed down the hall with unwavering focus. Taking a firm step, she resolves to make use of her next suitor. A dark-haired boy waits for her on a sun-drenched terrace. The boy Benjamin rises to greet her as she arrives. She quietly recalls how fierce he was as an adult. He is identified as Benjamin, the sixth prince of Tolerantia. Clink. A cup of coffee is placed before her. She smiles politely, commenting on his love for coffee. Benjamin begins to lecture passionately about his interests. She sips her drink, thoroughly bored, and thinks, "Here we go again." She internally fumes that he always lectures her on economics and studies. Annoyed, she realizes their relationship is going nowhere. She reaffirms her goal. She must get close to Benjamin to acquire his weapon. Saraphina beams with a cheerful and innocent smile. The sixth prince watches her with a stern, unimpressed expression. Flinch. Her eyes widen in sudden alarm. The prince suspects she must want something from him. She panics, wondering if he's seen through her friendly act. He leans back in his chair with a slight smile. He puts on a charming facade, hand to his chest. He dismisses her act, claiming to understand her intentions. A flashback reveals the cunning prince used alchemy to rise. A stalking panther symbolizes his predatory nature. Unimpressed, she mentally compares him to a hissing kitten. The prince adjusts his tie with a confident smirk. Saraphina calmly sips her tea, observing him. He asks if her gift of cocoa was a test of his knowledge on sugar trade, then decides she likely just thought it was tasty. They sit opposite each other on the sunlit terrace. He thinks of the suitor competition as a game to win. He assumes her actions are for some political reason. He asks if the princess needs to rely on foreign power. He leans forward suddenly, startling her. He stares intently, awaiting her response. With a charming smile, he extends his hand. He runs a hand through his hair, looking pleased. He proposes a mutually beneficial arrangement, where they use each other. Saraphina listens, her expression unreadable. He glances at her with a confident, knowing smile. She looks out thoughtfully, considering his bold proposal. Leaning back, she coolly recalls his offer to be a tool. Her expression sharpens as she holds her teacup. She sips her tea, wondering if he can truly deliver. He confidently declares he's passed her test, while she privately thinks that's not it, but decides to play along. He moves to lean on the stone balustrade. He leans over the table, getting closer to her. He smiles eagerly, ready to strike a deal. Her sweet demeanor gone, she stares back with cold eyes. She requests rare, high-priced crystals from his homeland. He scoffs, asking if that's all she wants. A close-up shows a golden liquid in a teacup. Her eyes widen in shock at his casual response. She clenches her fist beside her teacup. The prince looks taken aback by her reaction. He insists he knows the crystal's value very well. Changing the subject, she calmly eats a madeleine. A memory of a burning castle reveals a past conflict over those very crystals. She watches him with a knowing gaze. The prince looks flustered, a bead of sweat on his face. She points at him, continuing her line of questioning. He places a hand on his chest, seemingly in thought. He turns slightly, considering his next move. He comes to a decision, thinking, in that case, as an apology, Benjamin slides a document across the table to her. He reveals it's an alchemy recipe for creating a homunculus. She stares at the recipe, shocked he's attempting such a feat at his age. A close-up shows the complex handwritten recipe and an alchemical symbol. The narration explains it's a high-level technique to create skilled artificial life. She reads the recipe and lets out a delighted laugh. Her cheerful reaction leaves Benjamin completely startled. Tapping the document, she confidently points out a specific section to him. She smiles, pleased with her own insight. Benjamin looks at her, thoroughly confused by her knowledge. He picks up the recipe and reads it again, processing her suggestion. Saraphina calmly sips her tea with a satisfied smile. Her expression hardens as she thinks that this wasn't an act of kindness. A scale appears, with her finger easily outweighing a miniature Benjamin. Holding him in her palm, she mentally declares her superiority and demands all his secrets. Humbled, Benjamin admits her suggestion of using a pearl is far better. As she stands to leave, he watches her go. Still holding the notes, she turns back with a brilliant smile, saying she enjoyed their time together. She gives a polite curtsy as he walks past her. She watches his retreating figure from the sunlit terrace. Alone now, Benjamin covers his face and begins to laugh. He admits to himself that he has gravely underestimated Princess Saraphina. He envisions the power and wealth he could gain by marrying into the Astria family. He considers the prospect of having such an intelligent princess as his wife. Later, Saraphina walks with her aide, her expression serious and thoughtful. Benjamin looks on with a devious, determined smile, his ambitions ignited. A loud crash echoes from a grand estate. Inside the glass of a large arched window lies shattered. A portrait shows a cheerful, black-haired man with a brilliant smile. Another portrait shows Saraphina putting on a strained, polite smile. The black-haired man holds a young Saraphina, asking if she's all right after the incident. She laughs it off, cheerfully insisting that she's perfectly fine. He looks down at her with a worried and unconvinced expression. She recalls he's been frantically visiting all week to apologize for missing tea time. Her eyes narrow as she assesses the situation. He gently takes her hand in his. Click. He opens a small, velvet-lined box to reveal an ornate necklace. He smiles down at her, presenting his gift. Her eyes sparkle with curiosity as she asks what the necklace does. He cheerfully explains its instant death magic, which she finds far too extreme for self-defense. She recoils in fear, hiding behind her attendant and rejecting the scary gift. The man's smile falters, his expression turning to annoyance. Peeking out from behind her attendant, she looks truly frightened. Madame Grey watches with a knowing and subtle smile. Addressing him as Your Majesty, Madame Grey agrees the tool is too risky. Kneeling, he argues that such a powerful defense is necessary. Madame Grey's expression remains stern and disapproving. Saraphina clenches her small fist tightly at her side. The king glares, and Madame Grey asks what's wrong with killing an enemy. Madame Grey looks on with a solemn expression. The young princess looks up, her eyes wide with shock. Madame Grey's profile is etched with quiet resolve. Saraphina's gaze hardens, with newfound determination. A memory flashes, a desperate plea not to destroy her soul. She grips her attendant's sleeve tightly. Madame Grey declares a princess should hold flowers, not blood, offering to take on the grim tasks herself and asking for the magic tool. The king watches with a serious, unwavering gaze. He holds a small, ornate box in his palm. He stands before Saraphina and Madame Grey, his back to the viewer. Kneeling, he addresses the young princess directly. He presents her with an intricate, jeweled brooch. He gently places the brooch into her small hand. Saraphina stares at the gift, her expression unreadable. Madame Grey closes her eyes with a sad, gentle smile. Saraphina hugs her father tightly as Madame Grey watches approvingly. The scene changes to Benjamin, who sits alone, deep in thought. His eyes narrow with a flash of ambition. He watches as a butler opens the doors for a visitor. He clenches his fist, thinking that she has finally arrived. He watches from across the room as the princess enters. Saraphina arrives with a radiant, cheerful smile. Benjamin politely welcomes Princess Saraphina, offering to serve the tea himself. An elegant white and gold tea set is prepared on a tray. He smiles confidently, his plan in motion. An attendant speaks with the princess. An attendant pours a dark liquid into a strange blue orb. The mysterious blue orb is held carefully. Benjamin thinks with a sly smile that the princess will soon be his. The attendant stands ready to serve the princess. Smiling, Saraphina agrees to enjoy the tea. Benjamin watches her, his expression confident. He reveals his plan, a secret potion from his homeland. She carefully adds something to her own teacup. He explains that adding sugar will activate the potion, thinking triumphantly that she cannot escape. As Saraphina drinks, he anticipates the love potion taking effect. He internally gloats that she cannot escape the love potion's power. She pauses for a moment, holding the cup to her lips. She beams, her smile bright and completely unaffected. The attendant stands before the seated prince. An attendant holds a silver pitcher. He smirks, convinced that a little milk won't ruin his potion. Saraphina lets out a cheerful laugh. Clink. She places her teacup back on its saucer. They sit opposite each other, and Benjamin begins to drink his tea. As he sips, he notes the rich scent and sweet taste. He freezes, a shocking realization dawning on him. Sweet? His eyes widen in horror as he remembers he added no sugar. Saraphina smiles sweetly, her plan having worked perfectly. Benjamin freezes mid-sip, completely captivated. He wonders if a voice can truly be so enchanting. His hand trembles as he reaches for his cup. He is overwhelmed by her seemingly divine presence. Saraphina watches with a knowing smirk. To him, she appears as a radiant, angelic girl. Overcome with emotion, Benjamin begins to cry. Saraphina smiles, her plan proceeding perfectly. She knew all along about Benjamin's plan. She recalls his ambition to conquer and rule. He dreamed of using her demonic power for himself. His entire scheme was based on a love potion recipe. Her expression hardens with resolve. Benjamin offers her the drug tea. Turning away, she firmly requests milk. An attendant deftly swaps the teacups. Her unexpected request leaves him stunned. Playing innocent, she offers him a handkerchief. Flustered, he scrambles as she watches calmly. She hides a satisfied laugh behind her hand. Blushing, he gratefully accepts her handkerchief. She cheerfully invites him to ask her anything. She continues her performance with a brilliant smile. Completely charmed, he eagerly offers to share all his secrets and books. Saraphina's sweet smile conceals her true intentions. The scene shifts to his private, book-filled study. As she reads, he explains the nuances of alchemy. Feigning excitement, she calls his knowledge amazing. She casually brings up the legendary love potion. HMPH. He scoffs at the idea dismissively. She smirks, thinking how love dulls a genius. He begins to write, confident in his knowledge. Saraphina watches him with a calculating gaze. His quill glides across the parchment. He gasps, suddenly realizing something is wrong. Whoosh! The recipe suddenly erupts in a magical explosion. Ugh! He is thrown across the room by the blast. He realizes a safeguard ritual is protecting the recipe. Surrounded by flames, he wonders why it activated. He desperately calls out for the princess. He looks up to find her sitting on his back. Her heart pounds with fear from the sudden chaos. A memory flashes, her mother begging her to survive the flames. She whispers in horror, "Mother." She remembers the countless fires she unwillingly started. The demonic seed had burned a city against her will. She recalls the pain of watching her world collapse. Her mother's final moments echo in her mind. The room around her is consumed by fire. Dark, shadowy energy begins to envelop her. An inner voice screams at her to get out and run away. Heck, surrounded by flames, she lets out a terrified gasp. The fire suddenly explodes, blasting her off her feet. She scrambles through the burning room, desperate to escape. Urgh. Her heart pounds with fear and exertion. She reaches for the doorknob, begging her power to stop. A dark voice tells Saraphina to leave him, reminding her he tried to drug her. She clenches a post, refusing to leave him behind. She turns and runs back into the inferno. She grabs Benjamin's leg, trying to pull him to safety. With a determined grimace, she struggles to move him. She knows magic would be easy, but she hesitates, fearing the consequences. As she sits on a throne of flames, a demonic voice demands she leave him now. No, she screams back defiantly. She resolves not to watch someone die in these flames again. She shields the unconscious Benjamin with her own body. The scene changes to a serious-looking, white-haired boy. Attendants burst into the room, shouting to rescue the princess and prince. A man in a red uniform looks on in utter shock. Maids and servants rush in with water, telling her to follow them this way. Being led away from the chaos, she wonders why this happened. A white-haired boy named Cile stands at the door, flanked by hooded figures. She's stunned, wondering why Cile is here. Outside, a convoy of carriages stands ready. A boy with dark hair watches the scene unfold. His expression is cold and unreadable. Saraphina, holding a parasol, recognizes Prince Benjamin. An official report declares the fire was just a simple accident. Saraphina stands before a man seated on a throne. Benjamin walks with his head down, deep in thought. He thinks to himself that he can't remember what happened that day. A man suggests it was an assassination attempt, as King Tolerantia expresses his concern. Saraphina's eyes widen in surprise at the suggestion. Benjamin coolly informs her that he doesn't need a farewell. He states there is no need for goodbyes between them. Saraphina thinks that if Benjamin returns, she will have a choice to make. The wind blows gently through the trees. Benjamin smirks, declaring that he hasn't given up. He confesses she's become the purpose of his life, stunning her. He turns and walks away, leaving her standing alone. He glances back with a look of quiet determination. The scene shifts as she holds up a large stuffed rabbit named Duke Bunny. She carefully places Duke Bunny on a chair. Her maids giggle amongst themselves as they watch her play. The maids eagerly offer to join her game, one even volunteering to be a flower pot. She turns to them with a slightly unsettling, wide-mouthed grin. The disappointed maids sigh, "What a shame," as the princess walks away. Saraphina continues to smile contentedly to herself. With her room prepared, she asks herself if it's time to begin. Whoosh! Ingredients fly as she quickly begins her work. She pauses, recalling a past embrace with a man in a red cloak. She carefully prepares a purple potion with a sprig of lavender. In another memory, she holds a black book, looking toward a dark-haired man. While pouring a purple liquid, she wonders what Cile and Jera are up to. Poof! Holding a small green vial, she finishes her creation with a flash of pink light. She sits at her tea table, thinking she's mixed in her own mana. Her head whips around as she hears a sound at the door. A brown-haired attendant reaches for the doorknob. She suddenly remembers with a panicked look. It's time for tea with Cile. Thump. She quickly places a small vial on the table. She greets the attendant at the door with a huge, enthusiastic grin. The attendant smiles warmly, asking if she is ready. She gives him a sharp, assessing look. She clenches her fist, ready to act. She cheerfully grabs his arm, ready to go. The attendant smiles, pleased by her enthusiasm. He thinks to himself that it would be an honor. As they walk, he tells her he has a gift for her. She looks surprised to receive a single, beautiful white rose. The scene changes to her facing the white-haired boy, Cile. Saraphina looks down with a slightly sad expression. Cile stares back at her, his expression cold and distant. The attendant gestures for Cile to have a seat. Flinch! Cile's hand quickly stops the attendant from pulling out his chair. He stands stiffly beside the chair, refusing the attendant's help. The attendant looks surprised as Cile looks away dismissively. Saraphina watches in confusion, thinking this has never happened before. She glances at him from her seat, wondering if it's another scheme. Cile sits down, still looking away from her. She beams at the attendant, thanking him for his kindness. A servant wheels in a cart with an elegant silver tea set. Cile raises a hand, stopping a teapot from pouring mid-air. Saraphina looks down, crestfallen by his refusal. She nervously clasps her hands in her lap. She looks up with hopeful, pleading eyes. Her three maids watch from the side, smiling with adoration. Cile glances at the fawning maids with a look of disdain. He firmly closes his eyes, refusing her silent plea. The maids recoil in shock, gasping that he refused. She asks if his refusal is due to his vow of simple living. The narration explains a lemon tart was prepared since Cile only drinks water. Looking at Cile, she says she feels sorry for the chef. 1 hour later, she's slumped over the table in defeat as he sips his water. Cile calmly announces that time is up and he is leaving. He rises from his chair, turning his back to her. She watches him leave with an annoyed expression. She wonders if he's even human, since her begging didn't work. Leaning on her hand, she stares out the window, lost in thought. She realizes with determination that he must have a weak spot. She approaches the brown-haired attendant with a new plan in mind. The scene flashes back to a younger, cheerful Saraphina at a tea table. Her mission takes her to the bustling royal kitchen. Tap, a chef rhythmically chops vegetables on a cutting board. A smiling chef formally welcomes the princess to the kitchen. She gives him a sweet, innocent smile in return. She and her attendant stand before the chef, ready to make her request. The chef thinks to himself how kind the once-feared princess has become. Looking at an array of fine cuisine, she asks what Lord Cile eats. The question leaves her looking completely bewildered. Clatter. A starkly simple plate is set on the counter. She stares with wide-eyed shock at the contents. She asks in disbelief if this is truly his meal, just bread and an egg. The chef gestures with uncertainty as he confirms the simple diet. He explains that those with holy power can survive on minimal food. Her face falls as she realizes the depth of his asceticism. A memory reminds her that potions contain sugar and rose essence. She deduces his simple diet must give him extremely sharp senses. The startled chef stammers an obedient reply to her sudden request. Her eyes sparkle with mischievous excitement as she asks for a favor. The chefs exchange a look of complete confusion. The scene shifts to an opulent blue and gold office. A man reviews a report concerning a surviving dragon and the tower master. His subordinate reports that information on both is scarce, with dragon records hidden for centuries. The subordinate adds that no one has clear memories of the Archmage. The man's hand tightens into a fist on the desk. He glares, stating that they failed to find the information he wanted. He voices his disgust at his intelligence division's incompetence. His subordinate freezes in terror as he suggests it's time for a purge. The man panics, realizing a purge of the intelligence division is a death sentence. The official calmly ignores him, picking up another report. He notes that preparations for the princess's exhibition are going smoothly. The exhibition will feature her childhood portraits. Even the first letter she ever wrote to him will be displayed. The subordinate bows low, awaiting dismissal. He acknowledges the order and hastily retreats. Left alone, the man stands and examines the document. He studies the report, which is written in an ancient, unfamiliar script. He decides he must find either the dragon or the tower master. A dark vision shows the princess threatened by shadowy, monstrous hands. The text explains that with little information, they must rely on similar cases. Past examples include powerful spirit users and summoners. He considers the risk of losing control to a contracted being. The first solution is to summon an even more powerful contractor. A dark, demonic silhouette flashes across the screen. The second method is to seize someone else's magic to overpower the contractor. He rules out weak spirits but realizes a dragon might be the answer. He touches the ancient script, considering the chief mage's involvement. A pink-haired girl lets out a joyous, unrestrained laugh. The master of the magic tower has conquered all magic. A lone, cloaked figure is hailed as the Archmage, their world's only hope. In his office, the king looks over a document on his desk. He stands with a stern, thoughtful expression. His gaze falls upon a framed photograph of a smiling young Saraphina. He asks in surprise if the princess is in the kitchen. A maid confirms this, standing before him in a grand corridor. The scene pans over the vast, opulent palace hall. The king stands in a new room, overhearing instructions to dissolve flour. He enters the kitchen to find his daughter standing on a stool amidst the staff. Beaming with happiness, Saraphina whisks a bowl of batter. The king watches her, his expression one of utter shock. She turns and greets him with an adorable, wide-eyed smile. He remains frozen, speechless at the sight. Enraged, he wonders why no one reported that Saraphina was cooking for the very first time. He furiously orders artists, composers, and scribes to be summoned immediately to capture the moment. Saraphina happily offers him a fresh strawberry. He takes the fruit, still looking completely captivated. She playfully taps him on the nose with her finger. Still holding his hand, she smiles brightly up at him. He smiles back, his expression soft and full of affection. They stand together in the kitchen, a quiet moment between them. Saraphina bursts into a fit of gleeful laughter. The king's warm smile twists into a look of cold fury. He internally seethes, questioning why his daughter is baking a cake when their important, holy-powered guest should be the one doing it. She explains she wanted to give her first creation to him, her father. With a shy smile, she admits she was practicing. Softening, he asks if she made something he could try. She excitedly points toward her finished creation. A plate is presented, holding a charred, pixelated lump. She proudly presents the disastrous-looking treat to her father. Without a moment's hesitation, he lifts the plate and eats the entire thing. Crunch! Saraphina stares in wide-eyed horror. The kitchen staff reel back in shock, crying out for His Majesty. The king beams with a radiant, blissful smile. He looks utterly delighted, as if it were the most delicious thing he'd ever eaten. Flustered, Saraphina tells the concerned staff to hurry and attend to him. The scene shows an assortment of beautifully made cookies on a table. Later, as a blonde-haired woman brushes her hair, Saraphina pouts that she still wanted to bake a cake. She rests her head tiredly in the woman's lap. The woman looks down at her with a gentle, loving smile. She carefully adjusts one of Saraphina's hair buns. Saraphina gets up, complaining that the sheer number of cookies is excessive. She happily presents the many bags of cookies she prepared. The blonde-haired woman watches her with a serious, observant gaze. Saraphina offers a bag of her cookies to the woman. The woman accepts the small, ribbon-tied gift. Saraphina's eyes widen in surprise at what the woman says next. Holding the gift, the blonde-haired woman smiles and asks her to bake again any time. A blonde woman in a green dress comforts the pink-haired girl. Saraphina's eyes widen in sudden, complete shock. In a rush of emotion, she hugs the woman tightly. She closes her eyes, smiling as she thinks about how warm the hug is. The scene transitions to a vast, empty, and elegant hall. Saraphina stands alone, a look of grim determination on her face. She holds a small, beautifully wrapped pouch of cookies. She thinks he won't be able to reject cookies she baked herself, declaring, "It's on, Cile." Click. A servant opens a grand, gilded door for her. She enters the room with a confident, slightly mischievous smile. Inside, the white-haired boy, Cile, stands waiting by a window. She cheerfully presents her gift to him. With a bright smile, she asks if he may open it. He unties the ribbon, revealing a variety of homemade cookies inside. She beams, her plan seemingly a success. Clasping her hands, she pleads with him to have just one piece. She thinks smugly about how she even bandaged her hand to play for sympathy. Looking up at him, she puts on her most pitiful and innocent expression. Cile looks down at the cookies with a pained, somber expression. Confused, she wonders why he's acting this way over a simple cookie. He gently takes her bandaged hand in his. Their hands are enveloped in a soft, healing light. She stares in disbelief, realizing the light of healing is mending her fake wound. They share a silent, stunned look as the magic fades. He announces he must go pray and turns to leave. He walks away, leaving her and the blonde woman watching from the doorway. Saraphina glares after him, her plan completely foiled. Cile closes his eyes, a faint blush dusting his cheeks. In a flashback, a maid voices her surprise that Lord Cile refused the sweets. Saraphina excitedly asks a maid if she thinks Cile will like the cookies she made. A heavy sigh fills the air. The memory reveals a massive bowl overflowing with practice cookies.